I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is executive producer, behavioral scientist, and only woman in the US to own an MMA fight league featuring male and female athletes. No other than Miss Holly Nelson.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Holly, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. I have background in biochemistry. Got out of university and realized that I really wanted to go into the soft sciences. Became a consultant in doing consumer behavior and marketing, and then started working with a clinical psychologist who basically changed my entire life. Gave me a full brain flip when I read his theoretical work. And I basically took his book and changed my entire life with it, and then built a business around him called Truth Map.
Yes,
Then got
indeed.
into combat sports, and the rest is history.
Congratulations! You nailed it, Miss Holly. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So let's talk about the paradox of trying to improve your self-esteem. Can you tell us about this?
Yes. The co-founder that I work with in Truth Map, his name is Dr. Michael Lukens, and he taught me a lot about human behavior, and self-esteem is a particular issue for us, right? And one of the issues is that if you have to look yourself in the mirror and realize that your self-esteem is not as high as you would like it to be, and you have to point that out, you are in that moment actually also invalidating yourself, because you're also having to face the truth in your blind spot that your self-esteem is not as high as you believe that it should be or that you want it to be, right? So in identifying the gap between where you wish your self-esteem was and the self-esteem that you can finally look yourself in the mirror and see that you are really truly at, is within itself some sort of way to almost decompress your self-esteem a little bit. So self-esteem fixing is somewhat like a Chinese finger trap, where the way out is in. Instead of pulling, the harder you pull, the harder it is to get out of it. But the more you push in your fingers, the easier it is to remove one at a time. So self-esteem ends up being a very tricky thing to fix and improve, but there are ways to do it that make sense.
Makes sense, Miss Holly. Why might actively pursuing self-esteem lead to outcomes that undermine it?
So if you think about all these self-improvement books that exist right now, right? Think about like the titles of them, right? Like from fuck up to uh executive, or some
Yes.
titles like that are catchy, right? Like they basically show you, the title will show you that the person who wrote it had a journey of from bottom shelf to top shelf. And if you're looking at a bookshelf of books and you're looking at titles, and the ones that are talking about how to get to a higher place than where you're at already resonate with you, then you're already thinking you're a piece of shit, right?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
that's where your thought process is, essentially speaking, depending on the level of self-esteem. That's like an internal dialogue people have with themselves. It's like, I'm a bad person, I'm not a smart enough person, I'm not a good enough person, I'm not a pretty enough person, not an accomplished enough person. And every single time you acknowledge that those are things that you believe about yourself, you are literally depressing your self-esteem even more. So when you go to buy a self-help book, you are within its own step of taking it off the shelf, essentially telling yourself, you're not good enough, Holly, get to work. Now if someone outside of you came to you and said that, you're not good enough, Daniel, get to work, that would hurt you, right? Like that would be upsetting, especially if it was someone that you really, whose opinion you really truly cared about. We don't really think about it that way when we think about our internal dialogue or our internal opinions of ourselves. So when you start working on your self-esteem, you have to start by accepting the difference between loving yourself and liking yourself. And that's the first step to navigating self-esteem work without damaging yourself further.
Are there studies or psychological theories that highlight the risk of overemphasizing self esteem?
Well, I don't have anything in particular that I can point to from scientific journals. However, yes, theoretical work, there's plenty of them and lots of authors like Brene Brown, sorry, who's written books on it. But most particular, I build my um, essential understanding of self-esteem and self-worth on Dr. Lucan's theoretical work called The Physics of Emotioning Theory. And
Mhm.
that is essentially an understanding of how human emotions work and how the consciousness exists unto its own self. So that is where I base my understanding and self-esteem. And ever since I adopted that understanding of it, or the perspective of it, I have opened my life up in ways that I didn't think was possible. And also, when things come at me and try to traumatize my self-esteem, which still happens all the time, I can bounce back a lot faster, or I have better defense mechanisms against people's criticism.
Miss Holly, how's the pursuit of self-esteem intersect with traits like narcissism or perfectionism?
Ah, these are good. Which one are you more interested in? Perfectionism or narcissism? I'll start with whatever one you prefer.
Let's do perfectionism because a lot of people, I
Ah,
think,
struggle with it.
perfectionism. Yes.
Okay. Perfectionism comes down to your fear of feeling shame or guilt.
Yes.
Self-esteem is made up of shame and guilt, or our fear and or anger defense mechanisms against the feeling of those emotions, the experience of those emotions. On the flip side of self-esteem is the conscience, not to be confused with the conscious or the consciousness. The conscience, my right from wrong. It's also made up of shame and guilt. And so perfectionism is a trait or a behavior that ends up becoming something people pursue if they don't want to feel shame in the presence of others, or if they don't want to experience guilt in the presence of their own private lives. This can be learned from parental figures. It could be instilled into you, like in the military, the way that they indoctrinate military personnel to have a perfectionist, systematic way to approach daily living to make them efficient. And sometimes, if those mechanisms are bored into you through your experience, or like bored into you through your experience, it's very hard to get out of it. But there are also perfectionists who experience that through the concept of OCD, which would then be the fear of the disgust emotion specifically. And so much as that I could be disgusted in my own self if I don't get everything right, or I'm afraid everybody is going to find me disgusting if I don't get everything right. When you are frozen in your inability to feel shame or guilt, like if you've probably heard the term launch it messy, that's always been a problem for me, launching it
Mhm.
messy. And I've kind of actually been on a challenge the last few weeks to join podcasts without makeup on, to not go on and do everything like how all the influencers do it and do it perfect and hair's done and everything. And what it really comes down to is, can you challenge yourself to feel shame? That's not might not even be yours. Maybe someone does want you to be perfect all the time. Maybe it is a parental figure or something, but can you handle that? How much space can you hold inside of your own self for them to shame you and it not to bother you? The more you can let go of other people's opinions, or the more you can start thinking that you deserve grace internally, the easier it is to not be so perfectionist. Now, if you have high self-esteem, guess what? You can hold space for more shame and guilt. The higher your self-esteem, the more space you have in your bucket for when people try to shame you or for when guilt pops up for you. So you can make space inside yourself for others' criticism or your own personal criticism, which ends up happening very infrequently the more your self-esteem is higher. So you see how like the intertwinement of it is that the more I fix my self-esteem, the better I can be at just letting things go, letting what people's opinions of me are, how perfect this has to be. This book can be written like this and it's fine. It doesn't need a 40,000 time rewrite, you know?
Very well said, Miss Holly. Very well said.
I'm loving
Good.
the applause.
Yes,
I've
indeed.
never had this on a podcast before. My
You
self-esteem
des-
is going up right now. It's
yes,
increasing.
you deserve it. Could self compassion be a healthier alternative to a traditional self esteem work, and why?
Okay, so traditional self-esteem work is get rid of it. That's whatever everybody is hawking on the market these days is not it. Um, Self-compassion is actually where I would start with self-esteem repair.
Hmm.
Because if you are going to have to look yourself in the mirror and say, I have work to do, and that sentence might be within itself a hurt, like a hurt to you, then you have to be able to say, okay, I have work to do, and that's okay. Self compassion, though, can't be faked. So I like to use this little thing called a truth map probing mechanism, where you say out loud to yourself in the mirror this a sentence like, I believe in myself. And then you just wait and feel how it feels inside. If it doesn't feel like it's true, then you're very far away from that sentence being true, right? Then saying it the other way, I actually don't believe in myself. And then you can feel internally if that is the truth. You can also watch your inflection in your sentences as you say it out loud. Like, how does your voice sound when you say one thing versus the other? How do you feel internally? And so if you can look yourself in the mirror and say, it's time for me to work on my self-esteem. I'm going to give myself self-compassion. And you could say that to the mirror, and inside it feels like you actually truly mean that you're going to give yourself self-compassion. Then you've got a flat space to start. If when you say that it doesn't feel true, it means you're going to start ragging on yourself, and you're going to start dogging on yourself, and you're going to be harsh on yourself. And you need to work on self-compassion first. That's where where the difference between liking and loving comes in, and the comprehension of that.
Self compassion, indeed. How do cultural messages like love yourself or be confident contribute to this paradox?
So Dr. Lukens has redefined love as committed, benevolent interest. If I claim to love myself or someone else or something, then I have to be committed to doing good for and being good for the thing in question. And in order to do those two things, I have to have an interest in it in the first place. So I have to be interested in being good for and good by this thing that I love, correct?
Yes.
So when people say love yourself, well, there's really no way to explain how that works. What does it mean to love myself? Does it mean that I take hour long bubble baths? Like, is it self care masks? Is it journaling every single day? All of these things are great practices, but we know lots of people that are health and wellness gurus who have been exposed for being like essentially internally numb to actual, let's say, in enlightenment inside. And so it really comes down to when the masses are saying certain sentences and statements, but there's no scientific way or specific way for someone to act those out or understand them, it causes us to all feel shame because, wait, they look like they love themselves. Why can't I figure out how to do it? Right. So first it starts with redefining what loving yourself means. What does that mean to you? And if you can start with the foundation of committed benevolent interest, what does it mean to be committed to me? What does it mean to be benevolent to me, to be kind to me? What does it mean to be interested in me? Dr. Lucas says, loneliness is not the enemy if you're good company to yourself. Why don't you want to hang out alone with your thoughts? Why aren't you happy to just be in your own presence and understand what's going on with you and why you're doing the things you do and who you like and why this person's emotions affected you this way and what your childhood was like? Like, why aren't you self interested? So, really, it starts with that interest emotion, which is one of the most important emotions that a human being and all living creatures can experience.
Being with you, people sometimes do that. It helps you a
Mm.
lot. In what ways does social media amplify the struggle to cultivate authentic self worth?
Mm. It's funny you asked that. Last night I posted an Instagram reel where I had like it cut from a couple different scenes, and in one of the scenes there was a video of me crying right before one of my biggest events I've ever hosted in my life.
Hmm.
And some things had transpired, and business and in partnerships, and things were just so overwhelming. I just drove to a Michael's craft store parking lot, parked my car, and sobbed. And that video was from 2.5, 3 years ago. I've never posted that video, right? My entrepreneurial journey has been like so many Instagram reels, but never posted that. And last night I was like, you know what? It's time. People are out here grinding and it's hard. And it's time for people to understand that like this was not easy, and that it's not just sugarcoating, and that actually being more exposing of these struggles is the most important thing you can do.
Indeed. How does comparing yourself to others sabotage self-esteem efforts?
How does comparing yourself to others do what to your self-esteem?
Sabotage, yes.
Oh, so here's how this works. If you have high self-esteem, you don't compare yourself to others. So that's the
Mm,
goal, right?
yes,
Get to the point
yes.
of high self-esteem where there's that your internal mechanism doesn't just default to comparison, right? But on your journey up the ladder to the level 10 of self-esteem, you still don't have like full high self-esteem, so you are likely to compare yourself. Um, there's nothing about how it sabotages you. It literally just will. And that's where self-compassion comes back in too. Can you just look at someone and say, okay, they have what I want and I'm not there yet. But it doesn't have to turn into envy. And that's where, if you let it turn into envy, that depresses your self-esteem. But if you can just acknowledge that this is something that I desire, they have it, and I wish I had it now too. If you could just remove it from the emotion of it all, it doesn't hurt your self-esteem as much, and you can keep climbing the ladder.
Miss Holly, as executive producer and behavioral scientist, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Oh, goodness gracious. That would be a 13-page essay. Um, so right now I am trying to build the minor leagues for combat sports, for MMA, and that is basically a support system for athletes who haven't made it yet, athletes who are climbing the ladder in the space, and help them financially, emotionally, production wise, get them more fights so that they have more experience so that they can get bigger contracts with the bigger guys. And then as a behavioral scientist, I'm essentially trying to bring a paradigm shift to the world about how the human consciousness works, like what makes people tick. I want everyone on earth to know what makes them tick. And that's going to require content and utilizing other industries to disseminate that kind of information and understanding, and really kind of bring into the mainstream culture the desire for us to have self-understanding as a species.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Holly. And what advice would you give someone trapped in endless self-improvement loops?
Ooh, that's a good question. Take a week off. Take a week off. Don't do one thing to improve yourself. Don't do one thing. If you have the funds to get away, literally just get out of the environment you're in. Take the pressure off yourself, because there's an inner child in there that doesn't want to always chronically self-improve. There's an inner child in there that wants to play. And the more you let it play, your self-esteem will also improve as well. So if you're stuck in an endless loop, it's time to get off the track for a week, get your brain back into a good headspace where you have no goals for that week, you have nothing to achieve. Come back, take a deep breath, and start from the beginning.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for your advice, Miss Holly. And do tools like positive thinking risk reinforcing the paradox?
Do what theories like positive thinking?
Yes.
Your self-esteem is not actually driven by your thoughts. It's driven by your emotions. And then your thoughts are also driven by your emotions. So you can, okay, for instance, I'm going to look you right in the eyes right now. I have bright pink hair. My hair is bright pink. The fact that I can lie to you right here, we know I'm lying. We both know I'm lying. It's not bright pink. And I could do it to you. It means I could do it to myself. Humans do it a lot.
Yes.
And if you think about the positive thinking thing, well, if your thoughts don't drive your emotional experience, they do not. Your emotional experience drives your thought process. So you could sit in your head and say, I'm a good person, even though you don't think that you are. I'm a positive person, even though you don't think that you are. You're spending actual more energy on this whole positive thinking, positive attitude stuff. No, it should be more like, why is the emotion of anger always coming up for me in this context? Why am I sad like this all the time in this type of experience? Why do I feel shame and guilt over here? Why am I disgusted over there? And if you think about like the type of person that would just see the negative in everything, instead of trying to just change your thoughts about what you're thinking negatively, ask yourself why you're thinking negatively. What is driving it? And if you really look down deep, for everybody, there's always, nuances, but maybe it's, well, everything growing up was shitty for me, and so I expect more of the same. Well, if everything was shitty for you growing up, that means you had grief as a child. So there's sadness there buried inside of you from your childhood that's causing you to think negatively. It's not that everything in the universe that's bad that happens to you. It's that your inner child is so sad that their childhood was robbed from the fact that they didn't get the joy that most kids did. And that's just one example.
Good example, Miss Holly. Good example. Very well said and beautifully articulated. Before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my Abstract Essay is already in 5th season, Abstract Poetry in
Ooh.
2nd season, and of course my
Comedy?
Book 101 in 5th season. Yes, Comedy 101.
You have no idea. Stand-up comedy is like my favorite discipline. I'm gonna go listen. I'm gonna
Yes,
subscribe to.
please. We are teaching people how to be a comedian. Food 101 in its 5th season, people. Geography 101 and the love letters in 3rd season. And my baby podcast, Mental Health 101. Movie 101, review and music 101 in 4th season. And science 101 and sex 101 in the 1st season. So please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Holly, how can individuals embrace growth while cultivating self-acceptance?
Embrace growth while cultivating self-acceptance. Are you asking whether or not, are you implying that when people grow that they sometimes feel shame, like they shame themselves, they don't accept the fact that they're growing?
Yes, they have a low steam
Yes.
and
Okay. So
in the process.
that brings us back to the beginning of the conversation, where it's like, if you are already thinking that if you think your self-esteem needs improvement, then you already think it's low, which is within itself an invalidation of your self-esteem. So how
Yes.
can they embrace that? Back to the self-compassion idea, and also sometimes I think we overthink shit. Sorry. Sometimes I cuss like a sailor. I'm in combat sports, remember. What about just saying, okay, I just look yourself in the mirror, just say it out loud. Okay, I'm not really happy with where I'm at right now. That's fine. I'm gonna get to it. I'm gonna work on it. It's fine. It's almost like we make everything so important when it's really not as important as it needs to be. You just need to know that you are a human. You're on this planet for whatever reason you're on this planet for, and you get to find it. And you get to not love yourself and have a shitty life, or you get to love yourself and live it. And if we just stop making everything so gosh darn important, it's actually a lot easier to live this life the more you let it go.
Yes. Let it go, people, and live at the moment. Miss Holly Nelson, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy or whatever projects you are doing right now?
Yes. Okay. So everyone can find me on Instagram at MMA with Holly J, and then the Truth Map as well on Instagram. The Truth Map.
Truth Map people, yes, let's support Miss Helen Nelson, because if you support her, more and more and more empowering projects to come. So, Miss Holly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. Send me some info and I'll share with my followers.
More to come, people. See you soon.
Have a good one.